Hello, kiddos. Today's lesson number 2, is on sentence structure. There are 4 kinds of sentence structure: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. To understand what kind of sentence structure you're dealing with, you need to look at the number and kind of clauses it contains. So to review from yesterday's lesson, let's remember that clauses are a group of words that contain a subject and a verb. Alright, let's start with our first structure, the simple sentence. A simple sentence has one independent clause, which means it can stand alone and make sense on its own. An independent clause has a subject and a verb that are working together. They may contain compound subjects and verbs. So I know these examples are pretty simplistic, but our first one, the cat ran, has the subject cat, the verb ran. Our next one, the cat ran and jumped, has a compound verb, but they're both working with that same subject, so it's still considered a simple sentence. And next, the cat and dog ran and jumped, has the compound subject cat, dog, and the compound verb ran, jumped. This is still considered a simple sentence because both subjects are running and jumping. So the subjects and verbs are working together. It's one single thought. It's a simple sentence. Now at the high school level, of course, we're not going to use basic kindergarten sentences. So let's look at one that is still a simple sentence but has adjective and adverbs added into it, as well as different types of phrases. Barking loudly, the overgrown dog quickly ran over and scared the unsuspecting cat. If we pull out all the extra, our phrases and our adjectives, we're still left with the subject dog, ran, and a compound verb, scared. So dog is our subject, ran, scared is our verb. It's one subject working with the 2 verbs. It's a simple sentence. Our next sentence structure is called a compound sentence. A compound sentence is basically taking 2 simple sentences or 2 independent clauses and joining them together with a conjunction. It could be a coordinating conjunction like and, or, for, but, yet, or you could use a semicolon or a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb like consequently or however. So again, we're going to look at some just basic sentences. The first one, the dog ran and the cat jumped. Now the reason this one is different is if you look, our subject dog, ran, is our verb, is our first subject and verb, and our second one, cat, jumped, is our second. The cat isn't running, the dog isn't jumping, they are 2 separate ideas. Another way to test to see if there's a compound sentence is to cover up the conjunction with your finger and just test. On the left-hand side, you should have a sentence, the dog ran. On the right-hand side, you should have a sentence, the cat jumped. The same can be true for the other 2. Get rid of the semicolon, you have a sentence on either side. Okay, let's add back in all those adjectives, adverbs, and phrases. The scruffy dog sniffing around found the source of smell and quickly ran toward the cat. Consequently, the cat gave a screech and hustled up the nearest tree. Again, if you put your finger over the semicolon and look to the left side of the sentence, the scruffy dog sniffing around found the source of smell and quickly ran toward the cat is an independent clause. It could be separated and be a simple sentence on its own. If you look at the second half of the sentence, consequently the cat gave a screech and hustled up the nearest tree, it too can be on its own as a simple sentence. It's an independent clause. Alright, our third structure is the complex sentence. A complex sentence contains one independent clause and one or more subordinate clauses. Subordinate clauses are independent clauses plus either a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. When you add in that subordinating conjunction or relative pronoun, the sentence no longer makes sense on its own. That's why it's called subordinate or sometimes called dependent. because it depends on another clause to make sense. So look at the example below. You wouldn't go around saying to people, because the cat ran, or although it's dark outside, or when the game is over. That just doesn't make sense on its own. It needs another clause, another piece of information to complete the thought. So to help identify complex sentences, it's important to be able to recognize subordinating conjunctions and relative pronouns. There's only 5 relative pronouns, so it's pretty easy to memorize those. However, there's many subordinating conjunctions, but take a moment and read through the list. These are the most common. All right, here are some example complex sentences. The first example we're going to look at uses a subordinating conjunction. While the dog sniffed around trying to locate the cat, the quick-witted feline quickly darted safely up a tree. If you look at the part in black, you'll notice that I've underlined the subordinating conjunction. Again, you wouldn't go up to somebody and say, while the dog sniffed around trying to locate the cat. That doesn't make sense on its own, so you know that that's dependent or subordinate and needs an independent clause to help it make sense. The second part, the quick-witted feline quickly darted safely up a tree, could stand alone. It is an independent clause. The two together make it a complex sentence. Now when you're writing complex sentences, if the dependent or subordinate clause comes first, you'll notice that there is a comma. However, if you start with the independent clause, the quick-witted feline quickly darted safely up a tree while the dog sniffed around trying to locate it, you do not need a comma for that. Here's an example using a relative pronoun. The tricky thing about a relative pronoun is that it can go anywhere really in the sentence. Typically it's going to go right behind the noun that it's describing. The dog, who had been sniffing around the yard, finally identified the scent as the cat, who had already run up a tree to get away from him. Again, I've bolded the dependent or subordinate clause and left the independent clause in white. Punctuating dependent or subordinate clauses that use relative pronouns is a little bit different than those that use subordinate conjunctions. You need to ask yourself if the clause is essential, necessary to the understanding of the sentence, or non-essential. If it's non-essential, you'll place commas around either side. We will learn more about that in a later lesson. Okay, most importantly, why do we need to know all this stuff? Why does it matter? Well, good writers compose and revise, and they use structures that feel right for a particular purpose, the right flow, tone, or rhythm. This is what we call sentence fluency. Independent clauses, those shorter, well, I shouldn't necessarily say shorter. If you have a lot of adjectives and phrases, they could be longer. But independent clauses create a short, choppy rhythm that focuses the reader on a single idea. Whereas a compound sentence can connect ideas of equal importance and can create a smooth, balanced flow. Subordinate clauses add a layer of supporting ideas and can create momentum and complexity in a work. All of these things can be used to create tone or specific effect in your paper. Listen to this excerpt from There Will Come Soft Rains by Ray Bradbury. Notice how he starts off with short, simple sentences describing the action as the fire builds. And as the fire builds and the destruction begins, the sentences become longer and more complex, adding to the momentum of the piece. At 10 o'clock, the house began to die. The window blew. A falling tree bough crashed through the kitchen window. Cleaning solvent bottled, shattered over the stove. The room was ablaze in an instant. "Fire!" screamed a voice. The house lights flashed, water pumps shot water from the ceilings, but the solvent spread on the linoleum, licking, eating under the kitchen door, while the voices took it up in chorus. "Fire! Fire!" The house tried to save itself. Doors sprang tightly shut, but the windows were broken by the heat, and the wind blew and sucked upon the fire. The house gave ground as the fire and 10 billion angry sparks moved with flaming ease from room to room and then up the stairs, while scurrying water rats squeaked from the walls, pistoled their water, and ran for more, and the wall sprays let down showers of mechanical rain. As the story continues and the fire begins to fade, he returns to short sentences to slow the pace of the piece and to create a choppiness that slows the reader down. Okay, here's a chance for you to practice. See if you can identify what type of sentence structure each of these is. A. Some inventions are created by accident. B. Walter E. Deemer worked for a chewing gum company as an accountant, but wanted to improve the company's gum. C. He did experiments because he wanted chewier gum. D. He produced a successful mixture, and this mixture became the first bubble gum. Do you have your answers written down yet? A is a simple sentence. Inventions is the subject, are created is the verb, it's an independent clause. B is also a simple sentence. Walter E. Deemer is our subject, worked and wanted is our compound verb, and for a chewing gum company is a preposition, as an accountant is a preposition, as is to improve the company's gum is an infinitive. C is a complex sentence because of the subordinating conjunction because, and D is a compound sentence. If you take out the conjunction and, you'll see you have a simple sentence on either side. So I hope this lesson was helpful, and I hope you were able to get all 4 of those correct. If not, come to class with your questions tomorrow and we will do more practice.